Es una gran alegría recibir en este espacio de Manuel y Hermes a una persona que le tenemos muchísimo aprecio y por igual también nos unimos al aprecio que muchos dominicanos y dominicanas le tienen a un gran ser humano como es Satawake. Bienvenido a Manuel y Hermes.
Well, thank you so much for being here this morning, Manuel. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. And I remember back a couple of years ago, I guess it was, we did the very first interview, and I've had a little more practice since then. So let's hope this one goes a bit smoother. So.
Así es, y de hecho, bueno, súper felices porque fue la primera entrevista que hiciste para República Dominicana.
You were the first to interview me. I think you were probably the only one interested in interviewing me at the time. So.
Excelente. Sabes que conocemos bastante bien el trabajo tuyo hacia los derechos humanos, a los grupos vulnerables de República Dominicana, temas interesantes y puntuales donde pocas personas pueden dedicarse a un tema tan delicado como son los derechos humanos, porque hay que trabajarlo con pasión, con sentimiento y no solamente pensar en un solo grupo, sino de manera general. Esta parte de derechos humanos con Satawake, ¿surge en República Dominicana o es algo que viene contigo ya de más tiempo?
Well, you know, I've been working with marginalized communities for quite some time. When I lived in Chicago, I served on the board of directors of an organization that began as an organization for the prevention of gang violence. And then over time, it evolved into providing educational services, after-school programs, higher education services, just a variety of resources to these young people in marginalized communities in Chicago that, you know, were otherwise overlooked. Whether it was in the public school system or they came from, you know, separated homes and they just needed, you know, a opportunity that otherwise they would not have. And it's amazing when you give human beings an opportunity, you extend a hand to them, the results that we can see as a community as a whole.
Bueno, te has convertido en un gran líder y de hecho de mucha importancia en el tema de las redes sociales. Cuando tú emites algún comentario escrito, se convierte en noticia en República Dominicana.
Well, yeah, I suppose that people on some levels are interested in our social media pages. You know, that really began as a conscious decision that my husband and I made when we moved here. You know, we were faced right up front prior to coming to the Dominican Republic with some really strong hostility. And we had to make a decision, are we going to be just completely open and transparent and allow people to know who we are on a personal level, or are we going to be this mysterious couple living behind the walls of the embassy? And you know, we really thought long and hard about that. And our hearts told us that the only way that we can truly allow the Dominican people to know who we are as, you know, as a person of goodwill and my husband as an ambassador serving President Obama and the Dominican people in the bilateral relationship was to extend our full transparency to them. So we made a conscious decision to open up our lives and you know, what you see is what you get. And on some levels, that's offended some people, and on the overwhelming majority of levels, it has been extraordinarily well received.
Bueno, con esta contesta me surgen muchas preguntas y sobre todo comparaciones que son obligatorias a la hora de una persona cuando entrevista a una figura como usted. Y cuando mencionaba el tema de reacciones y de ser transparentes y no mantenerse tras los muros de una embajada, antes de llegar a la República Dominicana ya se manejaba las informaciones en todos los diarios del país, medios de comunicación, televisión, importantes comunicadores de República Dominicana le daban ya la bienvenida a ustedes con mucha alegría y sobre todo con un tema de donde se mostraba la transparencia y no ocultarse y llevar una vida misteriosa, como usted bien dice. Inclusive mandaron un video en las redes sociales con un mensaje a República Dominicana por parte de ustedes.
We did send a video, and that was a project of the State Department and some of the advisors within the State Department thought that that would be a good idea. And again, it was part of the transparent conversation, and we were happy to embrace that. And so yeah, I mean, we've been very comfortable with this process and with being open and transparent, so the Dominican people would have full access to us and know that if they have questions about us, if they have concerns about us, then we welcome their inquiries, and we hope that we can continue to have as much of a direct exchange of dialogue with people as we can, as we travel throughout the country and as my husband continues in the capacity of his work.
Cuando podríamos confesar y preguntarle a usted, cuando el presidente Obama decide enviarlo a ustedes en la misión diplomática hacia República Dominicana, cuando envían ya el mensaje al país y ustedes de una manera abierta y transparente anuncian su relación tal cual como es, ¿recibieron alguna oposición de alguien o no?
Well, Manuel, I think you're well aware that there were some people that didn't necessarily welcome us with open arms. But, you know, as people in public life, and as anyone in public life, whether it's, you know, Dominicans who are such as yourself, who is a public figure of this country, whether it be a politician, you know, a celebrity, anyone that exists in the public arena is going to get pushback and maybe some hostility from small groups of people.
Claro.
I mean, that just happens. Not everybody is going to love you. Not everyone is going to agree with every word that you say. And you have two choices. You can focus on that hostility, or you can recognize it for what it is, and it's just a lot of noise that surrounds you, and you can move on with your mission and try to implement the initiatives that you know are genuine and sincere and are in the best interest of the relationship, in our case, between the Dominican Republic and the U.S. And so that's what we've chosen to do.
Y menciona una palabra importantísima, relaciones de Estados Unidos con República Dominicana. Y usted tiene una influencia, bueno, bastante fuerte en lo que es la embajada también de los Estados Unidos, siendo el compañero, el esposo del señor embajador, y tiene funciones también que no son simplemente estar en su hogar. O sea, usted también tiene funciones de trabajo. ¿Podría compartirlo frente a la cámara? ¿Cuáles son esas funciones específicas?
Well, absolutely. I mean, on many levels, you know, I have been not just a partner to my husband for 27 years, but, you know, we have been advisors to each other for 27 years throughout our private sector careers, throughout our personal goals and initiatives. You know, we are each other's closest confidants. And, you know, I'll give you an example. You know, former presidents in the United States, going all the way back to Jimmy Carter. Rosalind Carter was the first First Lady of the United States that was an official advisor to her husband, the president. She actually sat in on cabinet meetings. And Jimmy Carter today will tell you that his wife was his #1 and closest advisor. And I advise my husband on many issues, specifically humanitarian issues as they pertain to his work. I obviously do not involve myself on levels that are, you know, classified. I don't have any influence in those sorts of things whatsoever. You know, to the chagrin of a lot of people, I have no influence whatsoever in the consular section or getting someone a visa or influencing a visa. You know, those are not the things that I am in a role to support my husband with. I'm in a role to support my husband in things that are important to us from a humanitarian perspective. And we spend a great deal of time traveling this country, meeting with communities that are marginalized, working with our USAID programs to bring more progressive initiatives to these marginalized communities. And sometimes they're very simple things, and sometimes they are somewhat complicated things. But, you know, these are sexy subjects. People don't get all excited about people who are living, you know, in squalor, and a lot of times they don't want to know about it. But, you know, we as human beings owe it, those of us who are blessed and privileged, we owe it to ourselves. We have a duty to extend our hand to those who are less fortunate. And, you know, people may not like that, and the media may not want to talk about that, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
Eso es importante. Bob, mencionaste relaciones de Estados Unidos con República Dominicana. ¿Estas relaciones reales cómo son y cómo están?
Well, I feel like we have a great relationship. I feel like our relationship has grown tremendously, specifically in the last, 2.5, almost 3 years since my husband's been here. He has an extraordinary relationship with President Medina. I know they talk frequently. I know that they collaborate on cooperative initiatives that the U.S. and the Dominican Republic work together on, things that are far above the level of which I have knowledge of, but nonetheless, I know that things are, in my view, going extremely well between our countries.
Muy bien, excelente, así es. Vamos de nuevo a Bob. Te mencionabas que en las redes sociales tienes una fuerza impresionante. O sea, lo que escribe Bob se ha convertido en portadas para periódicos, se ha convertido en comentarios para los medios de comunicación. ¿Esto te hace sentir a ti poderoso? ¿O esto es cuando tú escribes algún tipo de comentarios porque te sale del alma?
No, I don't think that makes me feel powerful or even influential. You know, I have a voice to express my observation of, you know, the subject matter that you weren't too specific about which subject matter, but to write about subject matters that are important to me, that are important to our bilateral relationship.
Voy a eso ahora.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, I think it's important. I think I think some of the subject matters that I write about, they don't get enough attention. And they are important, and they're important to my husband, and they're important to the work that we do here. So, you know, if I can't get the attention in the the professional media here in the Dominican Republic, then, you know, social media is an extraordinarily good tool to express our views and our opinion to the general population.
Y has captado la atención de ambas partes.
Well, thank you. I'm surprised anybody wants to read anything I say, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. So.
Así es. El señor embajador nunca te ha dicho, Bob, tranquilo, no más comentarios en las redes sociales. ¿Qué está pasando? ¿Se ha convertido todo en una revolución?
That would be a really interesting conversation. But very clearly, no. He has never done that. You know, in the beginning, when I used to want to express my opinion about a certain subject matter, I would often say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" or "What are your feelings about this?" And, you know, look, we don't always agree on everything, and he would share his opinion, but it was the sharing of an opinion. It wasn't a mandate whether I could or I couldn't disseminate my views. He would never do that. He may not necessarily agree with my views on a certain subject matter. You know, that's what an advisor does. They play an advisory role. They express their opinion, and you know, you internalize that and you use that information, and then you make a decision of whether you want to move forward or take alternative measures.
Bob ha demostrado en las redes sociales que tiene un gran poder a la hora de emitir cualquier tipo de comentario escrito. Vemos que inclusive temas que escribe se convierten en portadas para los periódicos de República Dominicana. Cuando usted ve que pasa esto, le ha comentado, Bob, ¿qué pasa? ¿Puedes seguir escribiendo en las redes o no puedes seguir escribiendo en las redes?
No, en absoluto. Bob tiene su propia voz y también es la voz que representa a nosotros como pareja. Así que yo apoyo lo que él diga porque yo lo he conocido ya por 27 años. y tenemos los mismos intereses. Pero como dijo el presidente Obama y el vicepresidente Biden cuando estábamos siendo juramentados, es que la República Dominicana estaba recibiendo un 2 por 1 con estos americanos a venir a representarlos aquí. Así que es importante que el que escuche su voz sepa que yo apoyo su voz y él tiene derecho de decir lo que él siente. Y por eso estoy muy orgulloso de él, que continúa en esa lucha con aquellos que no tienen voz.
Bueno, muchos dominicanos y dominicanas te ven como un gran activista de derechos humanos con mucho poder y de hecho comentando de cómo es revolucionario las redes sociales, cómo se han convertido también en noticias para los medios de comunicación. Dentro de tantos temas, ¿cuál ha sido como el más espinoso, el que te haya incomodado un poco más de algunos temas con derechos humanos?
Yeah, that's a great question, Manuel, and I have to say this. I have no regrets with anything that we have participated in since we've been here in the Dominican Republic. But one particular subject that has been a major challenge and a much more difficult process to get any as we would say, any traction or any movement with, is the case of gender-based violence and the abuse of women in this country. And this is of deep, deep concern, not just to myself or my husband, but this is a deep concern to our relationship. According to your national police, and this is extremely important, according to your national police, a woman is murdered by her husband or partner every 2.5 days. Every 68 hours in this country, a woman dies at the hands of her husband or boyfriend. And the judicial accountability for that is lacking. And we collectively have to do a better job. We have some extraordinary programs that provide assistance in the areas of gender-based violence, and we're going to continue to work on those programs collectively together. In fact, I'm very excited that in a few weeks, our Vice President's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, and our Ambassador for Global Women's Issues will be making a visit to the Dominican Republic, and we'll be meeting with a variety of folks here. I have to also give some real credit to your Vice President. Margarita Cedeno has done, a laborious job of trying to bring attention to this subject matter. This is something that the media just doesn't seem to want to talk about. They just, for whatever reason, don't think that this is important. These are human lives. And regardless of whether they live in a barrio or a batey, they live in a home without running water, they may not be educated. At the very basic level, they are a fellow human being. And they deserve protection, and they deserve to be able to live in a country and in a world that is free of violence simply because they are a woman and can't protect themselves. So we have a duty to reach our hand out, and we have a duty to protect those people. And so that's been very disappointing to me. I have made great strides to try to get attention around this subject matter. And so, it proves, I sorry to disprove your point, but clearly I'm not powerful enough, or I would have had done this by now.
El tema, violencia de género en República Dominicana es un tema que es bastante preocupante por esas cifras que aportas a esta entrevista y que muchos dominicanos y dominicanas ven las noticias a diario en los medios de comunicación. Pero, ¿qué aportes directos tienes en mente o qué estás haciendo como representante de la Embajada de los Estados Unidos, del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, para aportar a la República Dominicana con este tema?
Well, there's been a couple of things. I mean, these are, we specifically USAID through a variety of humanitarian work, not the least of which has paid for and serviced to develop 9 justice centers throughout the country, which are um, basically places of resources, legal resources for women who are being abused, to go to these justice houses, and we provide counseling, legal guidance, direct them to places where they can find a protective environment to live. But these are very difficult because on the flip side, there's only 3 shelters for women in this entire country. And when you have a woman killed every 2.5 days, clearly there is a strong need for more, shelters and places of protection for these women to go. So USAID is doing great work in that arena. We're also doing great work through USAID with the young generation. A program called Alert to the Hoven. Since its inception, we've serviced over 100,000 young people, which is an extraordinary number to be proud of, that we've helped that many young people. But in the same respect, it's a very sad number that there's 100,000 youth in this country that need those services. And look, there are most of these children are from marginalized communities, obviously from single mother households. There is a lack of familial stability in their life. And, so we provide these resources to do the best we can. But these are troubling issues that cannot be fixed overnight. They will take a collective effort. We are working very aggressively on our side. I know that the Vice President is working aggressively with your government on her side. And so, collectively we can make a huge difference, but we have to keep talking about it. And, again, it's a subject matter not a lot of people want to engage in.
La parte también de lo que es la diversidad de la población LGBT, aquí tienes grandes logros como trabajo fuerte en República Dominicana, y de hecho te quiero preguntar si esto ha sido una política establecida por el gobierno del presidente Obama o esto es una iniciativa del señor embajador y también de tu parte.
I think at this point, anyone that is unaware that LGBT equality is a foreign policy of President Obama has not been listening to the news. This is a direct initiative of the White House, of our State Department. It is, the President has for the last 3 years, maybe longer, I'd have to verify, I know, has by proclamation declared June as Gay Pride Month worldwide, and has directed our embassies around the world to participate in initiatives that promote the equality of LGBT people. And so our job is to fulfill that proclamation, and our job is to fulfill those initiatives and to participate. Our entire embassy participates. But the beautiful thing this year, and it's just, at times you just have to extend your hand. But something very beautiful happened this year. Not only did we participate, but a large portion of the diplomatic community, not the least of which the embassies of Mexico and the Netherlands and Switzerland, the UN, and several others participated with us at the Gay Pride events here in Santo Domingo. In addition to that, we were able to reach out to the private sector community through the relationships that we built. And as we kicked off the caravan this year, and the group of diplomats were standing on the stage collectively celebrating diversity, I looked into the crowd and there were several of my personal friends, heterosexual friends, what we call our straight allies, that accepted my invitation to be present for the kickoff of the caravan. So the LGBT community has friends far and wide, not only in the government, but in the private sector as well. And I'm just happy to see that this is a subject matter that people are finally willing to have a conversation about. Now, if I could just get them to talk about women being murdered every 2.5 days, I will have felt like I have done a good job here.
Bueno, y el emprendedurismo también debes sentirte muy bien, que es parte muy importante de tu vida.
It has been, and we've had we actually are starting have started a new program recently where we're meeting with young entrepreneurs and business leaders. I say young because they're not young people; they're adults. They're grown men and women.
La juventud es eterna en República Dominicana.
But they're not children, is what I'm trying to say. But these are very successful young people, and we have begun reaching out to them, and we've created we launched a dinner here at the residence, and we're going to continue this program to grow this program. The ambassador would like to leave a entrepreneurial advisory council for the next ambassador that comes in, because the American Chamber and the leaders at the American Chamber, they have direct access to the ambassador. But the younger generation doesn't have that type of access. And we would like to put in place an advisory council so that the ambassadors that come behind us have an opportunity to realize maybe even 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road what the relationship between our countries will look like based on who the up and coming leaders will be.
No, cada respuesta me lleva a otra pregunta y mencionabas un consejo bastante importante ya cuando llegue un nuevo embajador a la República Dominicana. ¿Hasta cuándo estarán en República Dominicana ustedes?
Well, I don't have an answer for that. That is undetermined. As long as whoever the decision makers may be allow us to be here.
Muy bien. Si cerrara los ojos por unos minutos y pensara, vamos a hacer el ejercicio ahora, cerrar los ojos unos segunditos y piensa qué es lo que más te ha llamado la atención de noticias hacia ustedes o hacia ti de manera particular, o de la manera como entran a tus redes sociales. ¿Qué puedes pensar que te llega a la mente?
I don't really pay any of that any attention. Or if you're talking about comments, look, with allowing yourself to be transparent, you have to own the responsibility that there are going to be people that are going to have differences of opinions with you, and sometimes those opinions are going to be hostile. I don't pay any attention to the vulgarity that certain people, and certainly a very select few people, very few, very minimal. Why would I want to focus on such a small minority of responses when the overwhelming majority of responses are genuine, sincere, positive, embracing? That's just, look, that's always going to be there. It's a product of public life. You asked me to think about things that resonate with me, things that are important. And something most recently that took place was through some of our work, I had an opportunity to sit down with a young man, Mr. Jake Keel, and review a film that he has worked on for over 5-6 years about the deforestation of the island of Hispaniola, and how it's directly adversely impacting the Dominican Republic. And this was something that was, I think, a product of our transparency. We are open and we allow this type of access. And so Jake came to the embassy with this issue, and unbeknown to us, the United States was importing charcoal from these nationally protected areas in the Dominican Republic. There should not be charcoal being created in these areas. These are protected forests. And yet this wood charcoal is being created there. And then our country, the United States, was actually importing it. And when I discovered this, first of all, we're not short on charcoal in the United States. There is no reason why we need to be importing charcoal from anywhere. And certainly, we don't need to be contributing to the deforestation of our earth. And so I reached out to Jake after a little bit of research and said, listen, why don't you go to Washington with me? And let me introduce you to some of my friends in Washington. Specifically, we went to 3 senators' offices and 4 congressional offices. And we sat down and we had conversations with them. And through that effort, we were able to get some attention on this subject matter. And now there's a variety there's a variety of agencies within our government that are now taking a look at this. And I will tell you, I'm passionate about the environment. I'm passionate about, because the environment is not the Dominican environment. The environment isn't the United States environment. The environment is our environment to collectively take care of. And we all have a responsibility, equal responsibility, to care for our environment for the future generations. And I will tell you, I will not stop until we no longer import charcoal from the Dominican Republic. We are not going to do that, long as I have a voice.
¿Qué piensa el señor embajador de ti?
You have to ask him that question.
Ya le pregunté.
Oh, well, then tell me.
La tenemos. ¿Cómo puede definir a Bob?
Hay muchas formas en las que se puede definir a Bob. Una de ellas es que es una persona que siente mucha pasión por las cosas que son importantes en la vida. Siempre es alguien que lucha por la vida de los demás. Ha dedicado su vida a hacerlo y es la mejor pareja que una persona puede tener. Es el mejor amigo que una persona puede tener. Y es alguien que ama su país y constantemente está luchando para que el mundo sea un lugar mejor. Lo ha hecho al venir aquí a la República Dominicana luchando por los derechos de aquellos aquí de los Estados Unidos y proteger los intereses de los norteamericanos, al igual que luchar por todos los intereses de los individuos de la República Dominicana, y podemos ver su pasión en todo lo que hace.
De los trabajos que realiza Bob en la parte de derechos humanos, en aportes a la mujer, la parte de emprender, de todo esto, ¿qué es lo que más le impacta de este ser humano?
Bueno, creo que lo que las personas han visto aquí en la República Dominicana y todo el que lo ha conocido durante toda su vida puede ver que él sabe que hay personas que están sufriendo. Por eso él habla de los temas de la mujer, las dificultades de la mujer en el área de trata de personas, en las áreas de prostitución forzada, también en las áreas de personas que continúan tomando ventaja y matando a sus parejas o compañeros y compañeras. Las cuestiones como el feminicidio son cosas que lo mantienen despierto y frustrado todas las noches, y él quiere hacer todo lo posible para hacer una diferencia. No es solamente hablar de los problemas. Cuando ven sus trabajos con los derechos de las personas, él continúa luchando por los derechos de aquellos que no tienen una voz, porque él sí tiene voz, y continúa educando a las personas para que cuando aprendan que el mundo es un lugar para todos, no un lugar donde las personas deben de vivir odiando a los demás porque no se entiendan. Eso es lo que él hace, y eso es lo que me atrae de él, que esté aquí conmigo.
Okay.
Con estas opiniones tan hermosas que no las viste durante la grabación con el embajador, pero ya cuando estés mirando esta entrevista te darás cuenta, es una expresión de mucho sentimiento, de mucho respeto y de mucha admiración. Y me imagino que eso tú lo ves día a día aquí en tu hogar, junto a él.
Look, we have an extraordinary relationship. We understand each other. We support each other. We respect our disagreements. And we both, I think, with equal passion, work collectively on the initiatives that we want to set forth, not just for this experience, but for our life experience.
Excelente. ¿Alguna exclusiva que quiera compartir con toda la audiencia de esta interesantísima entrevista?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Estoy buscando exclusivas, como cualquier periodista, pero que de acá han salido muchas.
An exclusive.
Sí, claro.
Manuel, you're always wanting the exclusive. Well, I kind of gave you an exclusive.
Me diste una la primera vez, en la primera entrevista.
Yeah, but I gave you an exclusive here. The vice
Me ha dado
president's
mucha.
wife, Dr. Biden, is coming to visit
Sí,
in a couple
me ha
of
dado
weeks.
mucha.
Yeah, I mean, that's not widely known at this point, I don't think. So we're very excited about this visit. It's going to be extraordinary. I also gave you an exclusive about our Entrepreneurial Advisory Council. That's something
Sí,
that's not been
correcto.
publicly announced.
Muy bien.
So see, you got two exclusives
Sí.
today.
Me deberías conseguir la entrevista con la esposa del vicepresidente para el
Is
programa.
You'll have to talk to her schedulers about that.
Mensaje para toda la audiencia. Para mí un gran placer siempre entrevistarte y de hecho esta entrevista, la primera que te hicimos fue una entrevista con preguntas muy poco usuales para la televisión. Esta ha sido con preguntas mucho más profundas y donde veo un Bob Satawake hablando con el corazón y con el alma.
Yeah. Well, you know, I would just like to say that, you know, our experience in this country, in this capacity, has truly been extraordinary. And it couldn't have been extraordinary without the embrace and compassion of the Dominican people. And, you know, it's, in some cases, it sounds a cliche that we've made friends that we will have for the rest of our lives, that we will continue to be, you know, family with. But that is the reality we have. And, you know, our timeline in this capacity, you know, at some point will come to an end. But our love and our experiences in the Dominican Republic will live with us for a lifetime.
Muchísimas gracias por esta entrevista. Muchísimas gracias por tu amistad, por igual también.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure, and my home is always open to you.
Bueno, no me lo digas muchas veces porque sigo haciendo entrevistas. Gracias,
Thank you,
Bob.
my friend. Thank you.
Continuamos con más.